had thus far kept myself from actually experiencing any of its sentences. Here I was spending 50 hours a week trying to eradicate all the phrases in my novel that sounded like sweat prickles the top of Marie's scalp, spending 100 painful minutes that very afternoon trying to understand what it really feels like to be a young girl sweating in a Parisian train station, listening to the fulcrum of world history pivot. And here was a first-time novelist named E.L. James writing a sentence like, "I sit bolt upright, shocked. Wow." Apparently spending no effort at all trying to decouple upright from its tenacious, clingy boyfriend Bolt, and selling approximately 6 gazillion copies every week. And so as I pedaled away on my bike and my neighbor pedaled away on hers, both of us working up sweats, presumably for different reasons, I had a miniature existential crisis. Why, I wondered, could E.L. James get away with letting a character gasp for breath when she clearly doesn't need the 2 words for breath, since what we gasp for when we gasp is most clearly breath? And why would I spend an hour trying to come up with a new way to describe a sweaty scalp when I might reach a lot more readers if I introduced a riding crop and the adjective panting? The answers, it turns out, have everything to do with my mother and that suit of armor that I wore home in the rain. 4. Right, you guys doing okay? Can you see? It's volunteer time. I need somebody whose English is your first language, who's willing to come up here and read a little bit into the microphone and be willing to fail a little bit. Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. What's your name again? Wendy. We met yesterday. Yes, we did. Thanks. Okay, I'm gonna read first a little introduction, and this is not set up. Wendy has never seen it.
No, I've never seen it.
All right. Okay, this is a letter to the magazine New Scientist. It's from like May of 1999. And I think I have the first part. You report that reversing 50 millisecond segments of recorded sound does not greatly affect listeners' ability to understand speech. This reminds me of my PhD, Nottingham University, which showed that randomizing letters in the middle of words had little or no effect on the ability of skilled readers to understand the text. Indeed, one rapid reader noticed only 4 or 5 errors in an A4 page of muddled text. Okay, the amazing Wendy is now going to read these next 2 paragraphs and read them as if they were spelled correctly. Even though they're all jumbled up. Okay, you ready?
This is going to be painful.
Yeah, you'll be amazing at it. So just see if you can read those as if they were spelled perfectly.
This is easy to demonstrate in I have no idea, publication of New Scientist. You could randomize all the letters, keeping the first 2 and the last 2 the same, and readability would hardly be effective. My analysis did not come to much because the theory at the time was for the shape and sequence recognition. Sabry's work suggests we may have some powerful parallel processors at work. The reason for this is surely that identifying content by parallel processing speeds up recognition. We only need the first and last 2 letters to spot changes in meaning. This was not easy to type.
She did so good. Why do you think Wendy, if there's so few of us here, we can maybe talk a little bit before I keep going. Why do you think Wendy could read those words so beautifully without really any trouble at all? Any guesses? There's no right answer, obviously. Yes, exactly. She's seen those words many, many, many times before, right? Did you have something else to add?
A lot of the words are very short, and so they don't change.
That's right. So there is some context. There are some goalposts in there that are fixed, right? And that helps you as you read. Very good. Wendy is an experienced, skilled reader. She's probably seen words like hardly or letters or meaning tens of thousands of times, right? Their patterns are so familiar to her that she doesn't necessarily need to parse each individual letter as she reads. She recognizes the word as a whole in their context and is able to move on, which is what all of our brains do when we're experienced readers, I think. Okay, this is a different example, and now all of you get to participate. Okay, counting silently to yourself, how many times does the letter F, like Frank, counting silently, appear in the following sentence? I'm going to give you 10 seconds. How many times does the letter F appear? You ready? How many times? 1, 2, 3. 10, 5, 3, 6, 4, Any other numbers? Fascinating, right? We were all looking at the same thing. Okay, you ready? I'm going to show you. I'm cheating because I've done it before. Answer is 6. Finished files are the result of 3 years of 4, scientific 5, study combined with the experience of 6 years. Why do so many of us, especially those of us who grew up in English-speaking households and read and write a lot, have so much trouble counting those F's? Yeah.
Because the F is in the word of, the F is pronounced like a V.
Absolutely. That's definitely a totally viable theory. Yeah, in the back?
Of are articles, so we just skip over them.
Yeah, preposition, but yes, right. And when you say we just skip over them, like why? Why is that a less important word to our brain? Yeah, you don't have to answer unless you were prepared to answer.
We don't need to fill it in. Our brain processes it without the word.
Yes, exactly. Right, we don't count them because our brains are in a huge rush, right? We're just moving, we're trying to extract meaning from the world, and we're just moving past these incredibly familiar things. We are habitualized when we read words on a page, especially workaday prepositions like to or of or for, simple combinations of letters we've seen thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of times. We automatically slip into comfortable, recognizable patterns, and we don't pay as much attention. Perception is selective, right? We've seen the word of so many times it dims out of our consciousness, so maybe we don't actually see it anymore. The eye glides and the brain makes assumptions that it's actually there. That's what we're assuming those words are spelled well. Sometimes we miss typos, right, when we're reading quickly. Cliches are simply bundles of words, like letters inside of words. These are words inside of sentences that have been grouped together so often that they've become as familiar to us as the pairing of the letters O and F. Convention has solidified certain packets of words into linguistic blocks that we plug into sentences as if they were single units. In its original sense, cliche might have indicated a ready-made unit of type, a metal plate from which issued unending standardized reproductions of print or design. In the era of manual typesetting, gasping for breath, for example, could have been an actual block of type a typesetter could plug into a sentence, just like bolt upright, or a chill ran up my spine, or covered in sweat, or crack of dawn. The trouble with cliches is that because of their repeated use, they gradually become invisible to us. Cliches don't ask us to see exactly what makes an eye glint, or what's so clear about a crystal, or what it actually feels like to rear up in bed after some kind of creepy sadomasochistic orgasmic dream. As writers, we might unwittingly pluck a cliche here and there from our memories because we're in a rush, or because we tell ourselves we'll fix it later, or because we're being lazy some under-rested Tuesday. We choose them both at the sentence and the narrative levels because we're afraid of becoming obtuse, afraid to divorce sweat from its stubborn predicate prickle, afraid to fail. We don't have the will or the time or the courage or the skill to invent a new grammar, so we use the grammar that people who have gone before us have used. But when I commit little failures like this, when I scramble to employ the clumsy symbols of language to try to articulate things that are ultimately beyond language, who exactly am I failing? Until 1869, when this white guy, Leo Tolstoy, published War and Peace, war in world literature was typically presented as splendid and spectacular. Military histories presented panoramas of glory and grandeur. But Tolstoy wanted to write a new kind of history, one that blurred fiction and reality, objectivity and subjectivity. He wanted to take the cliches of war and show his readers their constituting units, to take familiar, and to use my mom's phrase, store-bought, values like glory and heroism and honor, things as familiar to his contemporary Russian readers as the word of is to us, and to borrow the critic James Wood's image, flip that martial tapestry, that glorious tapestry, around to reveal the unsightly tufts of threads on the other side. 33 years later, another white guy, James Joyce, a med school dropout, was walking the streets of Paris, scribbling what he called epiphanies into a notebook, little jottings of overheard conversations or fleeting observations. Joyce was frustrated by the cliches and tropes of popular fiction. He saw them as chivalric romances and short stories that required a set of coincidences or contrivances of circumstance to generate their plots. Joyce found such artifices unacceptably crude. He wanted to grasp towards something that he believed was truer. So he began transforming his notebook epiphanies into short stories with different kinds of structures, a new kind of structure, stories that